There's a moment somewhere after 60 when the world begins to slow and your soul starts to whisper. You've spent a lifetime giving to family, to work, to duty. But now, a new question rises. What would happen if, just once, you gave something back to yourself? Traveling alone may sound bold, maybe even frightening, but for many women it becomes the most unexpected gift of all. A chance to hear your own thoughts, to move at your own rhythm, to sit by the window of a foreign cafe with no agenda, only wonder. This isn't about escape, it's about return, a return to the parts of yourself that got lost along the way. In today's story, we'll explore the gifts that solo travel can offer women in their 60s and beyond. Not just places you'll go, but the parts of your heart that you'll finally come home to. So, pour yourself a warm cup of tea, take a breath, and let's begin a journey, one that may just change the way you see the world and yourself. Gift 1. The freedom to choose your own rhythm. In a world that has, for decades, pulled you in 1,000 directions, work schedules, family responsibilities, doctor appointments, expectations, there is something radically healing about waking up one morning and realizing, I have no one to answer to but myself. That's the first gift of solo travel in your 60s. The gift of rhythm. Your rhythm. The quiet, sacred cadence that belongs to you and you alone. You see, so many women reach retirement only to find that the silence is deafening. After years of structuring their time around others, they've forgotten what they like, what pace feels natural, what lights them up. I remember speaking with a woman named Teresa. She was 66, newly retired, and widowed. She told me that for the first 3 months after retirement, she kept waking up at 6:30 a.m. sharp. Not because she had anywhere to be, but because for over 40 years she had trained herself to respond to someone else's needs. First her children, then her husband, then her boss. She was exhausted, and not just physically. Her spirit was tired of always being on call. One day, Teresa booked a solo trip to Kyoto, Japan. She'd always wanted to see the cherry blossoms in bloom. She didn't know the language. She didn't even know how she'd get around. But something inside her said, try. On her second morning there, she slept until nearly 10 a.m. No alarm, no one knocking, just the gentle light through the curtains and the chirping of birds in a new place. She walked slowly through the philosopher's path, stopping to take photos, to sketch, to breathe. She ate lunch when she was hungry, not at noon sharp to accommodate her husband's schedule. She visited temples when she felt drawn to them, not because they were on some travel blog's top 10 list. And at night she sat on her little balcony with a cup of green tea, watching the city lights blink awake. There were no emails to check. No one asking her what's for dinner, only peace and presence and choice. That's the real power of traveling alone in your 60s. You start to reintroduce yourself to yourself. For the first time in decades, no one else is writing your schedule. You can sleep in or rise with the sun. You can hike a mountain or sit in a cafe for hours with your journal. You don't need to compromise, negotiate, or rush. And here's what is surprising. It is not the sights that change you, it is the stillness. When you're alone in a new city and no one is watching, you start to feel your own rhythm again. Maybe for the first time since girlhood. You might discover that you like slow mornings, or that you hate museums, despite what your ex-husband loved. You might find that a simple walk through a farmer market fills you with more joy than any 5-star meal ever did. There is no wrong way to travel when you're traveling with yourself. Every decision becomes an act of self-respect. Every moment a chance to say, this is what I choose. And something amazing happens when you live like that for even just a few days. You come home different, lighter, calmer, with a kind of quiet confidence that whispers, I know who I am, and I like her. Because you gave yourself space, because you gave yourself time, because you gave yourself permission. So if you're afraid that traveling alone means being lonely, let me offer a new thought. What if it is the first time in years you'll truly feel accompanied by your own inner self? That, my friend, is a gift no one else can give you. And it starts the moment you decide you're worthy of your own rhythm. Gift 2, the gift of rediscovery. There's something magical about landing in a place where no one knows your name, where the streets are unfamiliar, the language foreign, and the customs just different enough to stir your curiosity. At first it may seem intimidating, but soon you discover something unexpected. You are still capable of wonder. Rediscovery is a gift that doesn't come wrapped in paper. It comes wrapped in moments, unexpected, unscripted, and unfiltered. For women in their 60s who have spent a lifetime knowing exactly what to do, where to go, how to show up, this is a revelation. After decades of being the planner, the caregiver, the responsible one, stepping into the unknown isn't just refreshing, it's liberating. Let me tell you about Marcia. She was 70 when she decided to take a solo trip to Portugal. Her friends tried to talk her out of it. What if something happens to you? What if you get lost? Isn't it lonely? Marcia smiled and said, "That's the point." She wanted to get lost. She wanted to not know. She wanted to walk down alleys and find her way by asking strangers. She wanted to make space for spontaneity, something her structured, predictable life rarely allowed. On her second day in Lisbon, she got completely turned around trying to find a tile museum. Frustrated but determined, she stepped into a small cafe to ask for directions. The man behind the counter not only helped her, but offered to walk her there. Along the way, they talked about his grandmother's cooking, about how Marcia had always dreamed of writing, and about the stories hidden in every cracked tile on old city walls. That detour became her favorite memory of the trip, because in that moment, she wasn't someone's wife. She wasn't the retired nurse. She wasn't the woman who always had a to-do list in her purse. She was just Marcia, curious, alive, seen. This is the rediscovery that solo travel offers you, not just of new cities, but of forgotten pieces of yourself. You might find that you love photography again, or that your sense of humor is still as sharp as ever, that you like trying new food, that you enjoy talking to strangers, that you're braver than you remembered. Rediscovery happens when you step away from the labels that life has put on you, mother, wife, caregiver, organizer, and allow yourself to be undefined again. It's a rare kind of freedom, one that shows you, even at 65, 70, or 75, you are still becoming. Every solo trip is filled with small surprises, like finding a street performer who plays your favorite childhood song on an accordion, or getting rained on during a coastal walk, then laughing at how silly and young you feel, or meeting another solo traveler halfway across the world who reminds you of your younger sister. These are the stories that stay with you long after the luggage is unpacked. Rediscovery is also about healing. You might find yourself crying in a cathedral, not from sadness but from the beauty of stained glass lit by morning sun. You might find peace on a park bench, watching pigeons in a square, and realize that you're no longer angry at time or age or loss. You're simply grateful to be here. Solo travel reminds you that your identity is not fixed. You are not done growing, not by a long shot. And the truth is, the older you are, the richer your rediscovery becomes, because you are not searching for the world's approval. You are remembering your own brilliance. So take the long route. Stop for the extra pastry. Ask the local woman about the scarf she's wearing. Write your thoughts in the hotel notepad. Paint again, dance again, get lost on purpose. Because sometimes you have to lose your way and to find your way back to yourself. Gift 3. The unexpected connections that touch the soul. One of the most quietly profound gifts of solo travel is this: the people you never meant to meet, who end up changing you just a little. You may think traveling alone means being alone. But here's the beautiful contradiction. When you step into the world on your own terms, you often find yourself more open, more available to the kindness of strangers, the laughter of brief conversations, the warmth of shared experiences. You drop the walls you didn't even know you had. Take Evelyn, for example. She was 73, a retired librarian from Seattle, who found herself on a slow train winding through the Swiss Alps. She'd always dreamed of this trip, planned it carefully, booked the window seat, packed her favorite thermos of tea. She expected a quiet, solitary journey with mountains and books. What she got instead was something else entirely. Across the aisle sat a young woman from Brazil, nervous, clutching a guidebook, and clearly anxious about her connecting train. Evelyn smiled. "Would you like help figuring it out?" That one sentence opened a floodgate. They talked the entire ride, about music, about travel fears, about Evelyn's late husband and the way he used to read her poetry on Sundays. The girl shared her dreams of becoming a writer, how she feared her voice wouldn't matter. Evelyn gently told her, Write anyway. Someone like you needs to be heard. They never exchanged phone numbers, never promised to stay in touch. But when the girl stepped off the train, she turned back and said, "Thank you, you made me feel brave today." That's what these unexpected connections do. They don't always last forever, but they last long enough to remind you that you still matter to the world, that your words can still heal, that even without meaning to, you can be someone else's turning point. When you travel alone, you notice things differently. You're more likely to say hello to the woman selling tulips on the corner. You will strike up a conversation with the barista, who smiles kindly when you fumble your foreign language order. You'll be invited into a conversation at a shared table or laugh with a child in line for gelato. These are not small moments. They're soul stitches. They remind you that connection doesn't require shared history. Sometimes it only requires presence, openness, a willing heart. I spoke once with Gloria, 68, who traveled solo to Morocco. She ended up sipping mint tea in a spice shop for over an hour, swapping stories with a local grandmother who spoke just a few words of English. They didn't understand each other's full sentences, but they understood each other's laughter. And that was enough. Connection is not about perfect understanding. It's about being seen. And there's something about being a woman in her 60s or 70s, walking the world with quiet courage, that invites something very special: respect. People look at you differently. They listen differently. You become a symbol, not of frailty, but of wisdom, independence, and grace. That's magnetic. Solo travel strips away the roles and leaves behind your essence. And people respond to that essence. They are drawn to the clarity in your voice, the way your eyes light up when you talk about your grandchild, or your garden, or your favorite book. You begin to attract real conversation, not just small talk. People open up around you because they feel your calm, your patience, your presence. And in turn, you're reminded that even if your phone isn't buzzing with messages, your spirit is deeply connected to the human experience, to the kindness of strangers, to the shared language of smiles and stories. So if you're afraid of feeling invisible when you travel alone, let me gently say you won't be. In fact, you might be seen more clearly than ever before. You might be the one who helps someone find courage, or who inspires a young girl to believe in aging with dignity, or who reminds a busy waiter that there's beauty in slowing down to talk. And even if no words are exchanged, the glance, the nod, the shared sunset on a park bench, that's a connection. And those are the moments that live inside us long after the plane lands. Traveling alone doesn't isolate you. It opens you to new kinds of belonging, and sometimes a stranger's kindness is the exact medicine your heart didn't know it needed. Gift 4: the joy of being fully present with yourself. There is a quiet kind of joy that only reveals itself when you are alone, and not just physically alone, but emotionally, spiritually, and intentionally alone. Not lonely, not abandoned, but present, with yourself, for yourself. Solo travel offers a sacred space that life often forgets to give us. In the rush of family obligations, careers, relationships, and routines, we often lose touch with the very person we've spent our whole lives being, ourselves. We become so used to meeting everyone else's needs that we forget to ask, what do I really need today? What do I actually feel? What would make me happy this hour? When you travel alone in your 60s, something begins to shift. The noise quiets, the pressure fades, and you find yourself alone in a cozy hotel room or on a bench overlooking a mountain, or sipping tea in a foreign cafe, and suddenly you hear yourself again. There's no need to perform, no roles to play, no schedules to chase. You breathe at your own rhythm, you walk at your own pace, you eat when you're hungry, not when it's polite. You linger when something speaks to you, you rest when you need to, and in all of that you meet someone beautiful, yourself as you are now. Let me tell you about Elaine. She was 66 when she took her first solo trip to Kyoto, Japan. Her children were grown, her calendar had finally cleared, and for the first time in years she wasn't coordinating for anyone else. The first few days felt strange. She found herself constantly checking her phone, instinctively writing texts that she never sent. She was used to filling silence with updates, photos, explanations, but something shifted on her third day. She wandered into a Zen garden, No music, no talking, just raked gravel and moss-covered stones. She sat down. No one rushed her, no one needed her, no one expected anything from her. She stayed for almost 2 hours. She said later, "That was the first time I felt truly still in over 40 years, and I wasn't lonely. I was enough." That's what presence does. It brings you back to your own heart. You begin to realize how rarely you've gifted yourself your full attention. Not as a mother, not as a partner, not as a friend, but as you. Just you. When you walk through an unfamiliar market alone, you start to notice things more vividly. The way the spices color the air, the rhythm of a vendor's voice, the softness in your own steps. When you hike a trail by yourself, each breath becomes more sacred, each bird call more distinct. You feel alive in ways that no group tour or noisy gathering can give. And here's the truth that many women discover on these trips. You are amazing company. You're wise. You're funny. You're curious. You're reflective. You don't need to entertain anyone else to enjoy your own thoughts. You can sit by a window with a coffee and watch people pass and feel entirely fulfilled. This joy of presence also invites healing. Many of us carry quiet grief for dreams not lived, for people we've lost, for time that moved too quickly. When you're alone in a beautiful place, you finally have room to feel it. And without needing to explain or defend, you just let go. Some women cry on balconies. Some write poems they never share. Some sing out loud on a hillside trail. It's not for show, it's for self, it's for truth. And out of that honesty, joy emerges. The kind of joy that isn't dependent on anyone else showing up, approving, or responding. The kind that bubbles up quietly, like a laugh when you trip over your own feet in a cobbled alley and realize how playful you still are. Or when you catch your reflection in a shop window and think, "I look peaceful." That's presence, and it's powerful. You don't need a bucket list, you don't need to make the most of every minute. Being here is enough. Watching the wind play in someone's laundry is enough. Writing your thoughts in a journal and then tearing out the page is enough. Taking a nap in the middle of the day because your soul asked for rest is enough. You don't need to justify your joy. Being with yourself fully, that's not indulgence, that's a homecoming. And it is perhaps the greatest, most underrated luxury of aging. To be alone and not feel lacking. To be present and not feel pressure. To look at your own soul and finally whisper, "There you are, I've missed you." So go sit by the ocean without your camera. Walk into that bookstore without anyone waiting for you outside. Eat dessert first. Dance to music in your headphones while you walk. Let your life be yours again. Let presence be the most beautiful gift you unwrap on this journey. Gift 5. The confidence that grows from within. There is a kind of confidence that no makeup, no fancy outfit, and no external approval can provide. It's the quiet kind. The kind that walks beside you when you navigate a foreign street alone. The kind that wakes up with you in a city where no one knows your name, and you like it that way. Traveling solo in your 60s doesn't just change how others see you. It transforms how you see yourself. For many women, confidence was something built over decades, but always tethered to roles. The dependable daughter, the reliable mother, the supportive partner, the helpful friend. And while those identities bring pride, they often pull our confidence outward, making it about what we do for others. But when you step into an airport alone with your suitcase and no one waiting at the other end, something shifts. That's not dependence, that's courage. Let me introduce you to Diane. At 70, Diane had never left the United States. She was married for 40 years, raised 3 kids, and rarely made decisions that didn't revolve around someone else's needs. After her husband passed away, her world felt small. But one evening, scrolling through travel blogs she'd secretly bookmarked, Diane saw a post. "You're not too old, you're just getting started." She booked a flight to Lisbon the next day. The night before departure, she almost cancelled it all. Fear wrapped around her heart like cold steel. What if I get lost? What if something happens? What if I fail? But fear isn't the end. Fear is the doorway. She got on that plane. And somewhere over the Atlantic, between sky and sea, she began to unfurl, one brave mile at a time. In Portugal, she got lost, twice. She fumbled through menus in a language she didn't know. She sat alone at a restaurant and ordered wine with a shaky voice, But with each tiny success, something bloomed, her self-trust. Not because everything went smoothly, but because she handled it when it didn't. That's real confidence, the kind that grows in discomfort, the kind you build, not borrow. Solo travel pushes you past the edges of familiarity, but in doing so, it introduces you to parts of yourself you hadn't seen in years. Your adaptability, your humor, your resourcefulness, your grit. And maybe most importantly, your tenderness with yourself when things don't go perfectly. You start to realize you can ask for directions with dignity. You can eat alone without shame. You can say, I don't know, in a new country and still be proud. You can handle surprises without falling apart. You are not fragile. You are layered, wise, steady, surprising, even to yourself. This confidence doesn't wear loud colors. It doesn't need to post selfies or tell everyone how brave you are. It whispers in the way you carry yourself, in how you respond when plans change, in the calmness behind your eyes when a stranger asks if you're lost and you say, "No, I'm exploring." It's the confidence of a woman who knows she is her own safe place. Diane came home different. Her children said she stood taller. Her voice was more assured. She started making bolder choices, wearing red lipstick, signing up for a painting class, speaking up in ways she never did before. Not because travel gave her something new, but because it reawakened what was already there. This is what solo travel gives you, not just memories or postcards, but a profound reclaiming of your inner authority. In your 60s, you're not past your prime. You're finally standing in the fullness of your power. You've lived, loved, failed, grown, and still you rise. Alone doesn't mean lacking. It means no longer waiting for permission to take up space. And the more you do it, the more you believe it. You become your own witness, your own cheerleader, your own proof that it is never too late to step into your own light. This confidence doesn't fade when the trip ends. It travels home with you. It follows you into the grocery store, the doctor's office, the next family gathering. It's there when you say no without guilt, when you ask for more without apology, when you walk into a room, not quietly, but completely whole. And it all started because one day you chose to go somewhere. Alone. Gift 6. The unexpected friendships that await you. When you travel alone, you might expect solitude, and at first it can feel like just that. A quiet breakfast by yourself, a museum stroll without conversation, a sunset you watch with only your thoughts for company. But something beautifully human happens when you move through the world with an open heart and no agenda. Strangers begin to appear, not as background noise, but as unexpected gifts. And suddenly, what began as a solo adventure becomes a mosaic of moments stitched together by surprising friendships. There's a kind of magic in being alone, because you're more available for conversation, for connection, for serendipity. You're not distracted. You're not talking to a travel companion. You're present. And when you're present, the world invites itself in. Let me tell you about Miriam. At 64, Miriam took a solo trip to Italy, a dream she'd postponed for decades. On her third day in Florence, she sat alone at a small cafe, sketching the Duomo in her travel journal. A woman at the next table, around the same age, leaned over and said, "That's beautiful. Are you an artist?" Miriam laughed. "No, I just like to draw what I see." And that was it. A sentence, a smile, an opening. The woman's name was Elise. She was from Montreal, also traveling solo. They ended up talking for hours about the food, their families, the grief they carried, the books they were reading. They walked through the Uffizi gallery together, then shared gelato in a quiet piazza. By the end of the week, they were exchanging contact info and making tentative plans to meet again next spring. Maybe Greece next time. That's the gift. A connection you never saw coming. Not forced, not curated, just real. You don't need years of history to call something a friendship. Sometimes it takes only a few shared hours and a deep conversation in a foreign place to feel seen, in a way your old life rarely allowed. When you travel solo, you're more likely to talk to the barista, to strike up a chat in line at a train station, to sit on a park bench next to someone and actually say hello. And the people you meet? They surprise you. An older couple in Spain who invite you to join their table and insist on paying for your paella. A young backpacker in Thailand who reminds you what it's like to live spontaneously. A street musician in Prague who lets you try his instrument and laughs as you fumble the notes. It's not about age, it's about presence. You open a door and life walks in. These encounters don't replace lifelong friendships, but they do something just as valuable. They remind you that you are still discoverable, still capable of being interesting, still worthy of being known. And sometimes these travel friendships last. They become email exchanges, postcards, phone calls on birthdays, a small circle of people around the world who remind you that you're connected to something bigger. You begin to realize you are never really alone. One evening, under a lavender sky in Provence, you may find yourself drinking wine with 3 other women from 3 different continents, none of whom you knew a week ago. You laugh, you cry, you share stories that don't get told at home. And you go to bed that night feeling full, not just from the food but from the belonging. Solo travel teaches you that your capacity for connection didn't shrink with age, it just got more intentional. And with intention comes depth. No small talk, just the stuff that matters. So if you're worried about being lonely on the road, let me offer a new perspective. The road is lined with invitations. You just have to be open enough to accept them. And even if you don't meet anyone else that day, there's one friendship you will always nurture. The one with yourself. That quiet, loyal companion who walks beside you in every cafe, every cathedral, every cobbled street. That's what solo travel offers. Not just time away from others, but time toward yourself. And in doing so, it makes space for the people you're meant to meet along the way. Gift 7. The joy of doing something just for you. There's a quiet kind of joy that rises when you do something just for you, not for your children, not for your partner, not for friends, community, or anyone else's expectations. Just for you. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand a round of applause, but it hums inside you, a gentle reminder that you are allowed to take up space in your own life. After 60, especially for women, that joy is often unfamiliar. Why? Because for decades your time and energy were tethered to responsibilities. You were the caretaker, the scheduler, the helper, the one who put everyone else's needs above your own. And then suddenly, as the kids are grown, the house is quiet, you find yourself at the center of your day. But you might not know what to do with that space. At least not yet. Solo travel changes that. When you book a ticket just because you want to go, when you choose the destination, the hotel, the daily plan, or even better, the lack of one, it sends a message to your inner self. You matter. Your desires count. You don't need a reason. Wanting it is reason enough. Let me share with you the story of Rosa. Rosa is 67. She spent most of her life caring for others. Her 3 children, her aging parents, her husband during his long illness. She did it with love, with grace. But she lost pieces of herself along the way. After her husband passed, her daughter suggested she take a break, go somewhere. Anywhere, her daughter said, just for you. At first, Rosa dismissed it. Traveling alone at my age? What would people think? But then one evening she stood in front of the mirror, brushing her graying hair, and whispered to her reflection, "What do I think?" So Rosa chose a place she had always dreamed of, Japan, a country of cherry blossoms and quiet temples, where everything moved with intention and artistry. She didn't go for culture, or photos, or status. She went because something in her heart whispered, "I want this." In Kyoto, Rosa took a calligraphy class, just her, a brush, and a scroll of delicate rice paper. She spent hours in silence, learning to shape words not for others but for the sheer pleasure of it. At the end, the instructor bowed and said softly, "You write with heart." That moment wasn't grand, it wasn't filmed, it won't be in any travel magazine. But Rosa cried in the taxi back to her ryokan because it was the first time in decades that she had done something, just for herself. And it felt good. So good. Not selfish, not frivolous, just right. This is the joy of solo travel. You learn to listen to your own desires again. To move without explanation. To make choices that are for no one's benefit but your own. And instead of guilt, you feel guiltless joy. You eat when you're hungry. You nap if you're tired. You skip the tourist spots if you'd rather sit under a tree with a book. You say yes to an impromptu cooking class or no to a group tour that doesn't interest you. Every decision, big or small, is an affirmation. This is my time, my joy, my life. And the more you practice that abroad, the more you carry it home. You start saying yes to a new hobby, even if no one joins. You buy yourself flowers because they brighten your table. You sign up for dance classes, not to be good at it, but to feel alive. The joy of doing something just for you is this. It reconnects you to your aliveness, your essence, your right to pleasure that is not productive but deeply nourishing. In a world that tells women to prove their worth through sacrifice, choosing yourself can feel revolutionary. But it's not rebellion. It's restoration. You're not abandoning others. You're reclaiming the parts of you that were put on pause. And here's the beautiful twist. When you feel full, nourished, alive, you actually give better love. To your family, to your friends, to the world, because now it's not from depletion, it's from overflow. Rosa came home from Japan with no big souvenirs, just a box of ink, a brush, and a new tradition. Every Sunday morning she practices calligraphy in her kitchen. It's her ritual, her quiet celebration, a weekly reminder that she matters and so do you. Gift 8. The healing power of silence and solitude. There is a sacred kind of silence that only reveals itself when you travel alone, not the awkward silence of an elevator, not the silence that falls during a difficult conversation, but the nourishing kind, the kind that feels like a soft hand on your back, like a room where your soul can stretch without apology. Most of us are not used to that kind of silence. For decades, life was filled with noise, children's voices, phones ringing, dinner timers, work meetings, family obligations. Even retirement, surprisingly, doesn't always come with peace. There's TV chatter, social demands, digital clutter, and then suddenly you find yourself alone in a place where no one knows your name. A quiet train through the Swiss countryside, a morning walk along the coast in Portugal, a park bench in Japan with only the wind in the bamboo for company. At first, it can feel strange, unsettling even. We are conditioned to fill silence, to respond, to move. But when you travel alone, there's no one to perform for, no one asking for your energy, no conversation you have to maintain, just space, stillness. And in that stillness, something remarkable happens. You begin to hear yourself again. Let me tell you about Joan. At 70, after surviving a cancer scare, Joan booked a solo retreat in the Scottish Highlands. No schedule, no cell service, just a small cottage, a journal, and her walking shoes. She spent the first day pacing, checking her phone out of habit, wondering if she'd made a mistake, but on day 3 something shifted. She stopped narrating her experience in her head. She stopped trying to assign meaning. She simply watched the clouds move over the hills, the sheep grazing silently in the fields, the way the light changed on the loch every hour. And in that silence, she heard herself breathe, not just physically, but spiritually. She began to write, not for a blog or a family update, but for herself. She remembered things long buried. She cried without knowing why. She laughed, too, out loud, alone. Joan discovered something that changed her life. Silence isn't empty. It's full, full of wisdom, full of healing, full of self-reunion. When you are constantly surrounded by people, even people you love, your energy is always moving outward. You're listening, reacting, adjusting, nurturing. But in solitude, your energy returns to you. You stop performing, you start being. And the deepest healing doesn't always come from therapy or medicine. Sometimes it comes from giving yourself the sacred permission to be still, to ask nothing of yourself, to just sit and let the world pass without asking you to catch up. You begin to notice beauty in detail, the ridges of a leaf, the warmth of sun on your skin, the ancient music of a town square at dusk. You meet yourself again, not as a mother or wife or friend, but as you, just you, the woman who still dreams, still wonders, still aches and grows and hopes. And what a powerful reunion that is. Many women fear solitude. We associate it with loneliness, but they are not the same. Loneliness is the ache of disconnection. Solitude is the embrace of reconnection, with yourself, with nature, with the divine. When you travel alone, especially in your 60s or beyond, you learn that silence is not your enemy. It's your sanctuary. It doesn't judge. It doesn't rush. It simply holds you like a grandmother's lap, asking nothing but your presence. In the quiet moments, over a slow cup of tea, In a room with no agenda, on a walk with no destination, you hear answers to questions you didn't know you were asking. You remember the parts of you that were buried under shoulds and musts and not yets. And you realize healing doesn't always come from doing more. Sometimes it comes from doing less. Sometimes it's not about finding yourself, it's about making space for the self that's been waiting, quietly, patiently, beneath the surface all along. Gift 9, the empowerment of trusting your own compass. In your 60s and beyond, you've spent a lifetime making decisions, big and small, for other people. You've raised families, supported careers, held things together when everything felt like it might fall apart. You've made compromises, sacrifices, and choices that weren't always for you, but for those you loved. And while that is noble, beautiful even, it can leave a strange silence inside. A silence that whispers, "But what do I want now?" Traveling alone later in life becomes more than just a change of scenery. It becomes an act of radical self-trust. Because when you're on your own in a new city, you don't have anyone to consult, no one to ask, "What do you want to do today?" You have to ask yourself, and then here's the powerful part: you have to listen. At first, that voice might feel quiet, hesitant. After years of putting others first, your desires may feel distant, but with every solo step you take, that voice gets stronger, clearer, more certain. This is the gift, reclaiming the right to follow your own compass. Let me share a story about Cynthia. At 67, after retiring from a long career in education, Cynthia booked a solo trip to Vietnam. Everyone told her she was brave. Some said she was crazy. Her children were worried. What if you get lost? What if no one speaks English? What if something happens? Cynthia smiled and said, "What if something beautiful happens?" She arrived in Hanoi with only a backpack and a journal. No tour, no itinerary. She simply followed her instincts. One day she wandered into a tiny cafe tucked behind an alley and spent 3 hours talking to the owner about tea. The next, she found herself invited to a family's rooftop dinner just because she decomplimented their flowers. She didn't have a plan, but she had curiosity. She had trust. And every time she said yes to something that felt right, even if it didn't make sense, something extraordinary unfolded. By the end of the trip, Cynthia was transformed, not because she had discovered a new country, but because she had rediscovered herself. She told me, "For the first time in decades, I was the only one I had to answer to. And I realized I'm pretty damn good at guiding myself." That is what solo travel gives you. The practice of listening inward, of checking in, not out. You start asking yourself questions you haven't asked in years. What kind of food do I really like? Do I enjoy mornings or nights? What pace feels good to my body? What excites me? What calms me? What do I want without needing permission? And as the days pass, your confidence builds. You no longer second-guess your decisions. You stop looking for approval. You trust the moment. You trust yourself. It might be choosing a different train route, skipping a museum for a nap, spending an hour in a bookstore instead of sightseeing. These are small things, but they are yours. And in claiming them, you reclaim you. This kind of empowerment doesn't end when you return home. It follows you, into your choices, into your relationships, into the way you walk, speak, and carry yourself. You begin to trust your gut more. You start saying no without guilt. You start saying yes without fear. You become the author of your own next chapter. It's not that you never feel uncertain again. It's that you know you can handle it. You know how to navigate the unknown. You know that inside you lives a compass that may not always be loud, but it's wise and steady and tuned to your truth. So often, the world tells older women to shrink, to be careful, to stay safe. But solo travel teaches you the opposite, to expand, to explore, to live boldly, not recklessly but intentionally. You've spent years being strong for others. Now, you get to be strong for yourself. And that strength, quiet, grounded, radiant, is the kind that lasts. If you've made it this far, then let me say this. You are already braver than most. To even consider solo travel in your 60s or beyond is not just a vacation idea. It is a quiet revolution, a statement to yourself and the world that you are not done yet, that your life is still yours to shape, to explore, to delight in. Each of the gifts we've explored, freedom, rediscovery, confidence, joy, self-love, growth, courage, healing, and self-trust, are not reserved for the young or the adventurous. They are available to you right now in this chapter of life, perhaps more deeply than ever before. Because now you have what time and youth could never give: perspective, patience, wisdom. You know that not every moment needs to be shared to be meaningful, that some of the best conversations happen with yourself. That beauty isn't always in grand sights, but in small moments. The steam rising from your morning tea on a balcony in Lisbon, the laughter of a stranger on a train in Kyoto, or the sound of your own footsteps on a cobbled street in Prague. Traveling alone doesn't mean you are alone. It means you are free. Free to choose, to change your mind, to say yes to what excites you and no to what drains you. You become your own travel companion, your own storyteller, your own safe place. And most beautifully, you begin to remember that life is not about arriving, it's about experiencing, with all its softness, stillness, messiness, and magic. So wherever you are right now, I hope this story has planted a seed, a little spark of possibility, a gentle voice saying, "Why not me?" Because you don't need permission to live boldly. You don't need a perfect plan. You only need a suitcase, a little curiosity, and the courage to trust that your next great adventure might just begin with a single, quiet yes. You have so much life left to live, and the most beautiful part, you get to choose how.